The studio lights burned hot, casting sharp halos around two black women seated opposite each other beneath the relentless gaze of three towering cameras. Makeup artists had retreated, producers held their breath, and the studio audience sat unusually still, almost reverent, like they knew they were witnessing something more than just another political debate. It was a Thursday evening, but it didn't feel ordinary. The air was thick, almost metallic. Something big was coming. The moment shimmered with tension, like the edge of a storm. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, 87 years old, a lioness of American politics, sat upright with a poise carved from decades of battles, fist raised in civil rights marches, voice shaking congressional chambers. Her eyes, behind sleek tortoiseshell glasses, scanned Jasmine Crockett with quiet calculation. Waters had been here before, on TV, in the streets, in smoky backrooms where policy and power danced. But something about tonight unsettled her. Across from her, Representative Jasmine Crockett, 44, was no newcomer to tension. A former civil rights attorney from Texas with a voice that cracked through lies like lightning. She'd risen fast, too fast, some said, hair styled in a bold bob, her lipstick a daring shade of crimson. She exuded confidence, but her leg bounced nervously beneath the table. She had admired Maxine all her life. Maxine had been her blueprint, and yet tonight they were not allies. Tonight they were adversaries. The program was called Voices of the Future, a generational conversation. But before the show had even aired, clips had leaked of off-air disagreements, cryptic social media posts, and anonymous sources stirring rumors. It was supposed to be a dialogue about progress and strategy for Black America, but the world tuned in, expecting fireworks. And now they were getting more than they bargained for. As the host opened with pleasantries, both women sat still. Maxine's face held the stillness of a marble bust, and Jasmine's smile was too tight. It wasn't just politics anymore, it was personal. Maxine Waters had come from the unforgiving soil of Jim Crow-era Missouri, the fifth of 13 children. Her father had walked out when she was 2. By 16, she'd moved to Los Angeles, taking night classes and raising children on little more than grit and a dream. She had been told no more times than she could count, and each time she carved that word into a stepping stone. The L.A. riots, the crack epidemic, the murder of black men by police, these weren't historical footnotes to her. They were wounds she still carried. She didn't just fight the system, she'd survived it. That made her protective, sometimes too protective of her legacy and her people. Jasmine Crockett was of a different era. Born in 1981 in St. Louis, raised by a nurse and a jazz saxophonist, she was taught to ask why and then keep asking. College in Houston, law school. She wore her hair natural long before it was trendy and sued the police before she ever ran for office. She wasn't afraid to call out Democrats or Republicans. Her slogan was unbought and unbossed. A nod to Shirley Chisholm, and she meant it. She was the kind of politician who tweeted her thoughts before the press team approved. That authenticity earned her loyal followers and powerful enemies. What brought them together tonight wasn't just television ratings. It was the soul of black leadership in a divided America. A proposed economic bill, the Empower Black Futures Act, had torn the Democratic caucus in two. Waters, despite her legacy of community uplift, had quietly opposed the final draft, believing it gave too many concessions to corporate interests. Crockett, to the shock of many, had endorsed it, arguing that imperfection didn't equal betrayal, and that communities couldn't wait another decade for perfect policy. The bill's passage hinged on public sentiment, and this debate. This wasn't just political theater. This was the battleground. As the host gave them the floor, Maxine was the first to speak. I have fought for black folks when it wasn't profitable, when it wasn't popular, and when it put my life at risk. I don't need applause or tweets. I need results, and this bill is not it. The room froze. Jasmine straightened in her seat. With all due respect, Congresswoman Waters. She began, voice steady, "You built the path I walk on, but I refuse to believe we only have one way forward. Our people are starving, figuratively and literally. This bill might not be perfect, but it puts food in homes, jobs on streets, and clinics in communities." The back and forth began civil. But passion has a way of unzipping civility. Maxine's voice rose like a church organ. "It's not about what looks good in headlines, Jasmine. It's about what lasts. I've seen our people used as bargaining chips before." Jasmine's hands trembled slightly as she interjected, "And I've seen them die waiting for progress. Don't tell me I don't know the stakes." As they clashed, the cameras drank it all in, but something else was brewing. In the audience sat Tamiko Boyd, a high school senior from Compton, dressed in her Sunday best, clutching a notebook. She had won an essay contest to attend tonight's event. Her essay had been about how both women had shaped her view of leadership, Maxine with her backbone, Jasmine with her fire. But now, as she watched them spar, something in her shifted. Why did it feel like watching your mother and auntie fight at Thanksgiving? Necessary, maybe, but painful. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Lionel Green, a 56-year-old producer and longtime Democratic strategist, was sweating bullets. He had pitched this event to rebuild fractured unity in the party. But now, it looked like he had started a war. And if this moment spun out, it could cost more than votes. It could cost trust. The turning point came not through yelling, but silence. Maxine paused after a particularly sharp exchange. She looked at Jasmine, not as a rival, but as a reflection. And for the first time that night, her voice softened. "I see so much of myself in you," she said, almost in a whisper. "That's why this hurts." Jasmine blinked, her breath hitched. "Then why does it feel like I have to earn your approval with every move I make?" That cracked something open. What followed was not a debate, but a reckoning. Maxine spoke about the exhaustion of being a pioneer, of burying too many friends who died poor and broken because their government failed them. Jasmine spoke about the burden of inheriting a broken system and being asked to fix it without breaking anything further. They were not enemies. They were two women carrying the same fire, just from different ends of the torch. Tears welled in Tamika's eyes. She wasn't alone. The studio fell into stillness, broken only by quiet sniffles and the hum of the air conditioning. Then came the moment that stunned millions. Live on air, Maxine reached across the table and took Jasmine's hand. "Promise me," she said, "that even when you disagree with the old guard, you'll still remember we were once the future too." Jasmine nodded. "I promise, but I need you to promise something too." Maxine raised an eyebrow. "Promise me you'll believe that we aren't trying to erase your legacy. We're trying to honor it by evolving." The audience stood. Applause thundered. Cameras captured two generations, once divided by policy and pride, now joined by purpose. And just like that, the tension broke. Not into victory or defeat, but into understanding. In the weeks that followed, the clip went viral. Over 60 million views in 3 days. Memes and think pieces flooded social media. Commentators called it the moment black politics reclaimed its heart. The bill passed, with amendments influenced by both women's views. A new task force was formed, chaired jointly by Waters and Crockett, focused on long-term economic sustainability for marginalized communities. Tamika's essay was published in major newspapers. She was offered internships by both women. In interviews, she said, "That night taught me that true leadership isn't about always being right. It's about being brave enough to listen." And Lionel, he won an Emmy. Years later, when Jasmine gave the eulogy at Maxine Waters' state funeral, she told the world, "She taught me how to fight. But more than that, she taught me when to listen." The audience wept, and somewhere in the back, Tamika, now Congresswoman Tamika Boyd, smiled softly because that moment, that night, had planted a seed, not just in her, but in a nation hungry for something deeper than sound bites. It was never really about a face-off. It was about a passing of the torch, and the fire still burns.